"Get that kid away from my entrance. She's scaring off customers." The source of the command was a white man in his 50s, clean-shaven, sharply dressed, and seething with visible annoyance. Gerald, the restaurant manager of Whitmore's Fine Dining, didn't like interruptions, and certainly not interruptions that looked like that. On the other side of the restaurant's heavy glass door stood a little black girl. She was no more than 6 thin, trembling, with a wool hat too big for her tiny head, and boots that looked 2 sizes too large. She had pressed her hands to the frosty window, gazing inside at the warmth, the linen-covered tables, the flickering candles, and the people laughing over plates she'd never seen in real life. No one moved to open the door. No one came to her defense. Inside, the hostess, a young white woman with a tight bun and tighter expression, sneered as she turned her back to the child. A waiter rolled his eyes and muttered, "Why do they always come around this time of year?" A couple near the window whispered and chuckled, then returned to their wine. Outside, Anna shivered. She hadn't eaten since lunch at school, half a sandwich and an apple, and her stomach had been growling for hours. Her cheeks were red from the biting cold, and her breath painted little clouds against the glass. Still, she didn't cry. She just stared, wide-eyed and silent, into the place where grown-ups smiled and warm bread sat untouched in baskets. Behind the kitchen, through a narrow hallway lined with mops and buckets, Marlena scrubbed a stainless steel sink, her gloved hands raw beneath the latex. She hadn't heard the commotion at the front. She was focused on finishing her shift, avoiding eye contact with the chef, and praying she wouldn't be asked to stay late again. "Hey, back of house." Gerald barked through the kitchen doors. "Your daughter's loitering up front again. Keep her away, or I'll have security do it." Marlena froze. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. Not loud enough for him to hear. She said it more to herself, more to the invisible weight that lived on her back. Marlena stepped outside through the side door, the cold slapping her cheeks instantly. Anna saw her and rushed forward. "Mama," the little girl whispered, arms outstretched. "Shh, baby," Marlena said, kneeling to zip up Anna's coat higher and tuck her scarf tighter. "You can't be up front, okay? That's not our place." Anna blinked. "But it's warm in there." "I know, sweet pea. But some folks don't like seeing us where they eat." Her voice cracked on the last word. Anna didn't quite understand, but she nodded and leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We read every message. Like this video to support more stories that matter, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next one. From across the street, a man watched. His eyes were fixed on the girl, on her boots, her breath on the glass, her mother's hunched back. He'd seen this before. Not here, not in a place like Whitmore's, but somewhere far south, in a different time. He had been 9 years old, holding his mother's hand outside a white-owned diner in Mississippi. They weren't allowed inside, not even to use the restroom. He remembered the sign, "No colored served here." He remembered how his mother's hand tightened when she saw the stairs. The pain of pretending not to care. He remembered the cold, and he remembered the shame. Ethan crossed the street. As Marlena stood to lead Anna back toward the alley, Ethan's voice stopped her. "Excuse me." She turned quickly, shielding Anna slightly behind her. Her face tensed, her breath caught. He saw her instinct years of being told, "Step back, stay quiet, know your place." Ethan raised a hand gently. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I saw her." He looked at Anna. "And I remembered something I thought I'd forgotten." Marlena looked uncertain. "She didn't mean to bother anyone." "I know," Ethan said quietly. He knelt so he was eye level with Anna. "You cold, sweetheart?" She nodded. "You hungry?" Another nod. "Then come inside with me." Marlena immediately shook her head. "Sir, thank you, but no. We don't want no charity. We're fine." "This isn't charity," Ethan said calmly, still looking at Anna. "It's dinner. It's a table, a warm seat, a moment of dignity." Anna looked up at her mother, waiting. Marlena looked at the man again, unsure. I insist, Ethan said, standing now. You too, ma'am, please. From the doorway, Gerald stared in disbelief. What's going on here? He snapped, stepping outside. Ethan turned. This woman and her daughter will be dining with me tonight, he said. Make room, Gerald scoffed. We have a dress code. And, sir, I don't think this is the proper image for… Ethan pulled a card from his wallet and handed it to him. Gerald read the name, and his face changed. Mr. Whitmore, I had no idea you were… You didn't, Ethan said. And yet, you made your assumptions anyway. He looked once more at Anna, then opened the door himself. Ladies first, he said. And for the first time that night, Anna stepped inside. Anna's boots squeaked as she stepped onto the polished marble floor. Her small frame dwarfed by the tall ceilings and crystal chandeliers of Whitmore's fine dining. The warmth inside hit her like a wave, melting the frost on her eyelashes, thawing her fingers enough to sting. She stood still for a moment, overwhelmed not by the heat, but by the silence. Every head in the room had turned. It wasn't just curiosity. It was judgment. Women in sleek evening gowns clutched their clutches tighter. Men in tailored suits raised eyebrows over the rims of whiskey glasses. Whispers floated like gnats. Is he serious? She looks homeless. She's colored, isn't she? She doesn't belong here. Anna didn't understand the words, not fully, but she recognized the tone. It was the same voice the store clerk used when she followed her mother down the cereal aisle. It was the same voice the principal had when she called Mama in about behavior. It was the voice of people who saw her and didn't see her at all. Ethan bent slightly toward her, lowering his voice. Don't worry about them. You walk with me, all right? She nodded, and her hand found his instinctively. His palm was warm, steady. He led her across the room, past white tablecloths and silver chargers, to a quiet corner booth. Is this the best seat in the house? She asked softly. Ethan smiled. It is now. He helped her into the booth gently, then looked up to see Marlena still standing by the doorway, unsure, her hands wringing her coat. I shouldn't, she said. I've got to finish up my shift. I'm on the clock. You're off the clock, Ethan replied, his tone calm but final. I just texted the kitchen. You're done for the night. You're with us now. Marlena's throat tightened. I can't, people will talk. They already are, Ethan said. Let them. One of the servers approached, her posture stiff, expression unreadable. Mr. Whitmore, she began. Would you like the children's menu? Ethan glanced at Anna, then back at the server. No. Bring her the same menu as me. No. The server hesitated. And, drinks? Hot chocolate, Ethan said. With real whipped cream. And for the lady, he nodded toward Marlena, a glass of red, something bold. The server nodded and walked off briskly. Ethan gestured toward the booth. Please. Have a seat. Marlena reluctantly slid in beside her daughter, smoothing down her shirt that still smelled faintly of bleach. She sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact with the room, her back straight like a wire. Anna beamed. Is this a date? She asked. Ethan chuckled. Only if you let me pay. Marlena finally smiled, though her eyes were still wary. The menus arrived, thick and leather-bound. Ethan opened his with ease. Anna flipped through hers like it was a storybook, her eyes wide at words she couldn't pronounce. What's a filet mignon? She asked. It's like the fanciest steak you've ever had, Ethan said. She leaned in. Does it have bones? Nope. Then I want that. Oh. Marlena opened her mouth to object out of habit, but Ethan caught her eye and gently shook his head. Let her. They ordered. The food would take time. The silence between them settled like a soft blanket. Heavy but not uncomfortable. Marlena finally broke it. Why are you doing this? Ethan looked at her, serious now. Because someone once did it for me. She blinked. When I was little, he said. My mother worked in a laundry. She scrubbed men's shirts until her knuckles bled. One winter, we had nothing. A man saw us, really saw us, and gave us a meal. It wasn't fancy. Just a bowl of stew. But it changed everything. That night, I stopped feeling invisible. Marlena stared down at her hands. I'm not used to being seen, she said quietly. I know. He paused, then added, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve it. Anna, oblivious to the weight in the air, reached over and tugged her mother's sleeve. Mama, she whispered. Can I tell you something? Marlena smiled. Of course, baby. When I was outside, I saw a lady laugh at me. She pointed, like I was funny. Marlena's chest ached. And then, Anna's voice lowered. I thought maybe if I disappeared, no one would laugh. Marlena's breath caught. She pulled her daughter close, wrapping both arms around her. You don't ever have to disappear, she said, voice thick. You are not invisible, Anna Marie Jefferson. Not to me. Not to God. Not to anyone who matters. Ethan watched them quietly, the back of his throat burning. The food arrived. The scent of rosemary and butter filled the air. Anna's eyes lit up. She took a bite, chewed carefully, and let out a surprised, Marlena laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. The laughter turned heads again, but this time, something changed. Not everyone looked away with disdain. A man at a nearby table smiled softly. A woman stirred her drink and glanced over with curiosity rather than contempt. The atmosphere, once brittle, had begun to thaw. One act of dignity had cracked the surface. As dinner wound down, Ethan reached for the check. The server shook her head. Already taken care of, sir. Your card's on file. He smiled politely, then turned to Marlena. Do you two have a ride home? We took the bus, she said. It's about 20 blocks. Not tonight, he said. I'll have my driver take you. Marlena hesitated. Ethan leaned in. This isn't a favor. It's just the right thing to do. Anna leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, her eyelids growing heavy. Mama, she whispered. Yes, baby? I think today was a good day. Marlena looked across the table at Ethan. Maybe, she said. Maybe it really was. Snow still fell when Ethan stepped out of the black town car, now parked just outside the side entrance of Whitmore's fine dining. The night had thinned. The busy hum of the dinner rush faded, replaced by the clinking of cutlery being washed and the echo of kitchen footsteps slowing down. He stood for a moment under the amber glow of the street lamp, coat collar turned up, eyes cast back toward the alleyway where he had first seen Anna. It had been years since Ethan felt something crack open inside him. That small girl pressing her hands to the glass, the hush in her voice when she said Mama, the way Marlena tried to shrink herself into nothing. That image refused to leave his mind. He lit a cigarette, out of habit more than desire. One drag, then he flicked it to the snow. He hated the taste, but it gave him seconds to think. Tonight had shaken something loose in him, something he had carefully packed away in the dusty corners of memory. He pushed open the side door and entered the back corridor of the restaurant. The walls were still the same bland off-white he remembered approving years ago in the renovation plans. Stainless steel surfaces gleamed under fluorescent lights. But now, every inch felt unfamiliar. Impersonal. Hollow. The sound of scrubbing echoed from the end of the hall. He walked slowly. At the mop sink stood Marlena. She had returned after escorting Anna home with the driver, unwilling to leave her station unattended. Her back was turned. Her shoulders hunched slightly. The same coat she wore earlier hung limply on the hook by the door, still damp at the edges. You don't have to be here, Ethan said gently. Marlena jumped. She turned quickly, startled, her gloved hands pausing mid-scrub. I thought you'd gone home. I did, he said. But something about cold silence makes it hard to sleep. Huh. She offered a tight smile. Some of us are used to the silence. Ethan stepped closer, taking in the space, the broom closet she called her workstation, the broken clock on the wall, the stained sink that hadn't been properly replaced since the restaurant opened. This isn't a kitchen for people, he murmured. It's not a kitchen at all, Marlena replied. It's a back room they forget, exists until the floor gets sticky. He looked at her then, not just at her, but into her. Why didn't you ever apply for a better position here? Marlena hesitated, then returned to her scrubbing. I did. Ethan raised an eyebrow. 3 times, she said quietly. Once for prep cook, twice for sous chef. Got told I didn't fit the image. Ethan's jaw tightened. I have experience, she added. Not formal. My mama taught me. My auntie ran a diner down in Mobile. I spent years over a stove before I moved north. But once you're in the back room, they don't let you out. He walked slowly to the counter, resting his hand on the metal surface. Do you like cooking? Marlena looked up. I love it. Then why did you give it up? She shrugged. Love don't pay the bills. Cleaning paid the rent. And folks don't question you when you're holding a mop. Ethan let the silence hang between them. Then he spoke again, more to himself than to her. When I started this place, I swore it would be different. A place where the food told stories. Where people felt seen. Marlena wiped her hands and leaned against the counter, tired. Sounds like you forgot that. He didn't argue. She was right. Outside the small window, snow drifted gently under the glow of the street lamp. A silence filled the room, not the silence of being ignored, but the kind that comes before something changes. I want you to cook for me, Ethan said suddenly. Marlena blinked. Now? Yes, right now. Something that means something to you. Don't dress it up. Don't hold back. Just you, your hands, and your story. She hesitated. There's no one left in the restaurant. I'm not feeding them, he said. Just me. Marlena stared at him. Then, without a word, she walked to the back fridge and opened it. Her hands moved with certainty. She pulled out cornmeal, buttermilk, green onions, and a small block of sharp cheddar. From the pantry, she took flour and baking soda. Her movements were quick, efficient, not showy, but full of memory. Within minutes, the small prep oven was on. The cast-iron skillet she had brought from home, the one no chef here had ever touched, was heating with a little bacon grease. She stirred, folded, mixed, poured. The scent filled the room, comforting, honest, southern. Ethan leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. What are you making? He asked. Grandma Reni's skillet cornbread, Marlena said. She made it every Sunday after church. Said it could raise the dead and silence an argument. He chuckled. Let's see if it works on me. She smirked. You don't look dead, but you do look tired. They stood in silence as the cornbread rose, its edges crisping in the skillet. 10 minutes later, she sliced a wedge, placed it on a simple plate, and handed it to him. Ethan took a bite. He stopped mid-chew. He chewed again, slowly. Then, he looked at her with eyes that shimmered not from hunger, but something else. This, he said quietly, tastes like my mother's kitchen. Before the money. Before the suits. When everything we had fit in a bag. And love was something you cooked. Not said. Marlena's throat tightened. She didn't expect validation. Not tonight. Not in this room. You've been hiding in this hallway. Ethan said softly. But your food doesn't belong in the shadows. She laughed under her breath. Try telling that to the folks out front. I will, he said, starting tomorrow. She stared at him. You're serious? Bye. I don't offer empty seats, Ethan replied. And I don't forget good meals. He handed the empty plate back to her. I want you to cook. Really cook. Lead the kitchen. Create dishes that tell stories like this one. I'll deal with the fallout. Marlena said nothing. She only stared at him. Then at the skillet. Then down at her worn shoes. After a long moment, she whispered, What if they don't accept me? Ethan replied, They don't have to, but they will respect the food. And through that, maybe, just maybe, they'll start to see you. Marlena blinked fast, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe. Maybe, just maybe. Her time in the shadows was coming to an end. Morning light slid across the brick walls of Whitmore's fine dining, casting long golden lines through the arched windows of the dining room. The scent of citrus polish hung in the air, fresh, clean, deliberate. It was Thursday, delivery day, and the kitchen buzzed with clanging trays and gruff orders barked over simmering pots. No one expected anything unusual. Gerald, still dressed in his customary navy blue blazer and deep red tie, surveyed the dining room with his usual tight-lipped pride. As general manager, he'd run the front of house with strict precision for the past 8 years. He made it clear through policy, posture, and tone that appearances were everything. And appearances, in Gerald's world, had a skin tone. He didn't notice Ethan when the man walked in quietly through the front doors. No fanfare, no entourage, just a tall man in a long wool coat, a folder under one arm, and the weight of a decision already made. "Gerald," Ethan said. The manager turned, startled, then straightened his posture. "Mr. Whitmore, sir," he stammered. "What a surprise. We weren't expecting—" "I know," Ethan said simply. "I prefer it that way." "Ugh." He looked around the room, his eyes sweeping across the polished surfaces, the high-backed chairs. The walls hung with black and white portraits of Michelin-starred chefs, none of whom looked like Marlena. "Place looks sharp," Ethan added, his voice unreadable. "Of course, sir. We're fully booked for the weekend. Your standards, always." Gerald smiled, too widely. "Let's take a walk," Ethan said. Gerald hesitated. "Right now?" "Yes, right now." He led the manager toward the kitchen, past the curious stares of servers and a few early prep cooks. As they stepped into the back hallway, Marlena spotted them from the dry goods shelf. Her eyes met Ethan's for a brief second. He gave her a subtle nod. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. In the manager's office, Ethan closed the door gently behind them. "Gerald," he said, setting the folder on the desk. "You've been here a long time. I've trusted you with this place." Yes, sir, and I've kept it running exactly to your standards." Ethan opened the folder. Inside, printed emails, interview notes, HR reports. One page bore Marlena's name, stamped with the word "rejected" in bold red. He slid the papers forward. "You remember this?" Gerald glanced down, his smile faltering. "That's old paperwork. Internal hiring decisions, nothing illegal." "Legal isn't the same as right," Ethan said, voice steady. Gerald straightened. "Look, sir, with respect, the restaurant has a certain clientele. There are expectations." "Expectations," Ethan interrupted. "That a black woman with more experience than half your kitchen staff isn't allowed to rise past mopping the floors?" "It's not about color," Gerald said quickly. "It's about image, presentation, comfort." "Whose comfort?" Silence. Ethan stepped forward, lowering his voice. "I started this restaurant with the idea that food could bring people together, that it could tell stories, real stories. Not just French techniques or overpriced foam on a plate. Stories of home, of grit, of grace." He tapped the folder. "You killed that story before it could begin." Gerald bristled. "Sir, I've upheld this place's reputation for nearly a decade." "Then it's time for a new chapter," Ethan replied. There was a long pause. "Are you firing me?" Gerald asked, incredulous. "I'm giving you the weekend to clear your office." "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm entirely serious. You'll lose clients. I'll gain my soul." Gerald stared, slack-jawed, as Ethan turned and opened the office door. He didn't slam it. He didn't raise his voice. But his decision rang louder than any outburst could. In the kitchen, murmurs spread like wildfire. Was that Gerald? What happened? Why was Ethan here this early? Marlena didn't ask. She already knew. She moved back toward her prep station, gloves in hand, but Ethan stopped beside her. "Can we talk a moment?" he asked. She followed him to the empty chef's office. The leather chair still smelled faintly of cigar smoke. Ethan stood near the window, hands in his pockets. "I just let Gerald go," he said. Marlena's breath caught. "Because of me?" "No," Ethan said. "Because of me. Because I let it go on too long. Because I turned my back on what this place was supposed to mean." She said nothing. "I want to offer you the position of executive chef." Her eyebrows shot up. That's a joke, right? I don't joke about food. I don't have a degree. No fancy restaurant history. "I don't want fancy," he said. "I want soul. I want truth. I want someone who remembers what hunger feels like and can serve a meal that heals." She stared at the floor. "People won't accept it." "Some won't," he agreed. "But they don't get to write the story anymore." She sat slowly in the chair across from him, her hands trembling. "What if I fail?" Ethan smiled, Then we fail loud, and with flavor. She laughed, then covered her mouth. Sorry. Don't be, he said. I want a kitchen that laughs. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. What's this? She asked. Advance salary, and a card for my tailor. She shook her head. I don't need handouts. It's not a handout. It's a uniform. If the world's gonna judge you, make sure you wear something that says you chose to be seen. GUI. Tears welled up in her eyes before she could stop them. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Marlena nodded, slowly. Yes. Ethan held out his hand. She took it. And just like that, the owner no one recognized gave the spotlight to the woman no one saw. The official announcement came at precisely 11:15 a.m., just as the first batch of lunch reservations began trickling in. A typed memo, printed on crisp white letterhead, was pinned to the staff board outside the break room. Effective immediately, Marlena Jefferson has been appointed executive chef of Whitmore's Fine Dining. E. Whitmore. The hallway went still. For 5 full seconds, no one moved. Then whispers erupted like a brush fire. You've got to be kidding. She's the new head chef? I thought she was a janitor. No degree, no Michelin anything. That's who we're supposed to follow? The sous chef. Daniel, a pale, wiry man with a beard as sharp as his tone, snatched the memo off the board and scoffed. She doesn't belong in the whites. She barely belongs inside the kitchen. Beside him, pastry chef Marjorie raised an eyebrow. You planning to say that to her face? Daniel crumpled the memo and tossed it toward the trash can. I won't have to. She'll be gone in a week. But she wasn't gone. At that very moment, Marlena stood in the walk-in fridge, silently organizing ingredients. She touched every crate of vegetables, every bag of flour, every slab of meat with the precision of someone not just planning a menu but declaring war with flavor. Behind her, the kitchen door creaked. You're not gonna win them over with lettuce, came a familiar voice. Ethan leaned casually against the doorframe. Marlena didn't look back. I'm not trying to win them over. No. No? She turned slightly, eyes calm. I'm trying to feed people. There's a difference. Ethan smiled faintly. You always this calm under pressure? No, she replied. But I learned to fake it after scrubbing floors for 10 years. While boys half my age called me sweetheart. She grabbed a crate of turnips, hoisted it easily, and brushed past him. He followed her out into the kitchen. The crew watched her openly now, some with curiosity, some with open resentment, others with quiet hope they didn't know how to express. Marlena set the turnips down, rolled her sleeves up to her elbows, and addressed the room without raising her voice. I'm not here to make friends, she said. I'm not here to take what's yours. I'm here because I earned this. Just not the way some of you did. Daniel crossed his arms. Marlena looked straight at him. I may not have trained in Paris, she continued, but I've cooked through grief, through joblessness, through power outages and heartbreak and eviction notices. I've fed crying children and broken men with the last sweet potato in the pantry. So don't talk to me about pressure. No one spoke. She pointed to the whiteboard. Menu meeting at 2 p.m. sharp. Bring your best ideas. Or don't bring anything at all. Then she walked to the prep table and got to work. That afternoon, she tasted sauces with the delicacy of a violinist tuning a centuries-old instrument. She rejected 12 aiolas, kept 1 mustard glaze. She adjusted the crab cake recipe by 3 ingredients and simplified the garnish on the duck. Every decision she made was deliberate, personal. She remembered names. She asked questions. She didn't raise her voice, but she didn't lower her standards, either. By evening, the staff was no longer whispering. They were watching, and the reservations didn't stop. In fact, they increased. Word had gotten out somehow, some way that Whitmore's had a new head chef, not a Frenchman, not a TV celebrity, but a black woman who cooked like your grandmother, if your grandmother had the hands of a poet and the patience of a saint. Still, not everyone welcomed it. That evening, as Marlena stepped out back to get some air, Daniel followed her. You're not gonna last, he said simply. She didn't turn. You think this place will protect you? He continued. It won't. The moment a critic calls your dish too soul food or unsophisticated, they'll drop you. She let the words hang. Then she exhaled. You done? He blinked. Good, she said, and walked back inside. Marlena didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, because her brain wouldn't stop turning dishes, textures, memory flashes of her mother's okra stew, her father's black-eyed peas on New Year's Day. She scribbled notes at the kitchen table while Anna slept curled on the couch, a book falling from her hand. When the sun rose, Marlena brewed coffee, packed her notebook, and walked with steady steps to Whitmore's. Ethan was already there, sitting in the dining room with a stack of papers. You're early, she said. He looked up, surprised. So are you. They exchanged a small smile. I want to do a soft menu this weekend, Marlena said. 4 courses, small plates, but each dish tells a piece of my story. I love it, Ethan replied. What's the anchor dish? She opened her notebook. Smoked catfish gumbo, she said, served with skillet cornbread. He grinned. Now that sounds like home. She nodded. It was my father's favorite. He said gumbo is what happens when scraps come together and make something whole. Ethan's smile faded slightly, replaced with something deeper. I know that feeling, he said. They sat in silence for a few seconds, both recognizing something in each other. Pain transformed into purpose. Later that night, the staff returned for final prep. The tension was still there, but it was mixed now with something Marlena recognized. Respect. And when the first bowl of gumbo was served to table 3, and the woman in pearls put her spoon down and said, "Oh my God," loud enough for half the room to hear, something shifted. It wasn't just a good review. It was permission. Permission for the kitchen to breathe. Permission for Marlena to lead. And most of all, permission for a little girl named Anna to press her hands against the same glass again, only this time, from inside. The glass was cleaner now. Anna noticed that right away as she pressed her little hands against the same window she once stood outside of in the cold. It no longer felt like a barrier between her and something unreachable. Now, it was just a window, a pane of glass that let the sunlight pour into the front of the restaurant and warmed her fingers instead of reminding her she didn't belong. Do you want to sit by the kitchen or the front today, sweetheart? Ethan asked gently, placing his hand on her shoulder. Anna turned to him, her eyes thoughtful. Can I sit where Mama can see me? Of course, he said with a smile. He led her to a small table just outside the swinging kitchen doors, one of the 2 reserved tables for staff family. It had become hers over the past few weeks. A little coloring book sat there, along with a worn stuffed rabbit that a waiter had secretly brought in after her second visit. Marlena peeked through the round window in the kitchen door, wiping sweat from her brow. She settle in? She asked Ethan as he stepped into the back. Like royalty, he said. Marlena chuckled. I packed her a sandwich just in case she doesn't like today's special. You might insult my menu. She smiled. Well, her palate is still developing. The kitchen was humming now, not frantic like before, but energized, focused. The tension had softened into rhythm. Even Daniel, who hadn't said much since the gumbo night, had started showing up early and prepping without complaint. He didn't speak to Marlena unless necessary, but he followed her directions. That was enough for now. She's not like the other chefs, one line cook had whispered to another earlier that week. She actually tastes our food before service. And she asks us what we think. Crazy, the other muttered, like she thinks we're people or something. Marlena leaned over a simmering pot, stirred it twice, then held up the spoon. Needs time, she said, just a pinch. The junior cook nodded and adjusted it without question. 2 minutes to fire table 6, someone called. Got it, Marlena answered. Her voice had weight now. Not volume, but presence. The kind that came from being listened to. The kind people followed not out of fear, but belief. Out front, Anna colored quietly. A server brought her a small bowl of fruit without being asked. She thanked him politely, just as her mother taught her. Ethan sat at the bar, going over invoices. Then the front door opened and with it, a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. A woman entered, tall, red-lipped, dressed in tailored gray with a coat more expensive than the average month's rent. Her heels clicked loudly against the floor as she walked straight to the host's stand. I'm here to review the new head chef's work, she said, without introduction. The hostess blinked. Do you have a reservation? The woman raised one eyebrow, clearly offended. I'm here on assignment, culinary review. I won't need a table. I'll observe from the bar. Ethan stood slowly. Then you'll observe with respect, he said. And you'll have a seat. My staff doesn't cook for anyone who refuses to sit at the table. She turned to him, taking him in. I assume you're the manager. I'm the owner. Her expression shifted, but only slightly. I've heard interesting things, she said coolly. I'm sure you have, Ethan replied. She was seated, and a menu placed before her. She waved it off. I'd like the house signature, whatever the new chef recommends. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And if you don't like soul food? She smiled thinly. I have an open mind. He returned the smile. We'll see. Back in the kitchen, Ethan informed Marlena of the critic's arrival. She paused for a beat, then nodded. Plate the catfish and the collard greens. No changes, no flourishes, just truth. 10 minutes later, the dish was served. The critic picked up her fork with a kind of surgical detachment, took one bite, then another, and then sat still. Very still. It wasn't the reaction people expected. Not a flurry of notes. Not a condescending smirk. Just silence. Then, slowly, she reached for her napkin and wiped the corner of her mouth. Ethan, who had been watching from the side, stepped closer. Well? He asked softly. The critic looked up at him, her expression unreadable. This tastes, she said slowly, like a sundae. I forgot I had. Ethan blinked. My grandmother used to make catfish this way, she continued, but we never wrote the recipe down. When she passed, I thought I'd never taste it again. She set the fork down. I came here to criticize, she said, but now I want to remember. Ethan gave a small nod. Then the kitchen did its job. Later that evening, as the staff began to close, Ethan approached Marlena in the back, where she was scrubbing down a countertop. She loved it, he said. Marlena exhaled. I wasn't cooking for her. I know, Ethan said. But she needed it anyway. Marlena looked over toward the door, where Anna sat on the same stool, swinging her feet and humming a quiet tune. She asked me today if she could be a chef when she grows up. Ethan smiled. She already island. She's just waiting for the right apron. Marlena's voice softened. When I was her age, I used to play restaurant in the yard. We didn't have play kitchens, so I used old boxes. My daddy would pretend to order collard greens and hot water cornbread. I'd serve him dandelion soup and pretend it was gumbo. Ethan leaned back against the counter. You ever tell him you became the real thing? He died before I got here. There was a long pause. Then tonight, Ethan said. He's sitting at every table. Marlena didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned to the stove, stirred the last pot of the night, and whispered, Welcome home, Daddy. And in the quiet hum of the kitchen, filled with stories told through steam and salt and spice, the new head chef wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her coat and smiled. Sunday arrived with a soft golden glow spilling across the windows of Whitmore's. Outside, the city was quieter than usual. Church bells rang faintly in the distance, and families shuffled along sidewalks, coats buttoned and hands clasped. Inside the restaurant, the scent of rosemary and brown sugar floated through the air, mingling with the faint sound of Ella Fitzgerald playing low on the speakers. Marlena stood at the stove, stirring a pot of slow-cooked oxtails, her mother's old wooden spoon moving in wide, patient circles. Around her, the kitchen worked in near silence, not from tension, but from reverence. Sunday dinners were different now. Ethan stood nearby, sleeves rolled, organizing plates. Though he owned the place, he insisted on helping prep on Sundays. He said it kept him human. I never thought I'd see a day when this place smelled like my grandmother's house, he said, inhaling deeply. Marlena smiled. Smell's just the first step. Wait till they taste it. Anna was already there, sitting in her usual corner seat with her rabbit in one hand and a small drawing in the other. She'd drawn Marlena in a chef's hat, standing in front of a pot with music notes floating out of it. It's not just food, Mama, she had said earlier. It's like you're making songs in a bowl. Marlena had kissed her forehead. That's exactly what I'm doing, baby. Feeding hearts, not just bellies. By noon, the tables began to fill. But unlike the weekday crowd in suits and designer heels, Sunday brought something else. An older couple, black and dignified, dressed in their finest, sat near the window and held hands as if it were their first date. A single father brought his 2 teenage boys in, their laughter echoing against the high ceilings. A group of elderly churchwomen, hats tall and voices louder, asked for sweet tea before they even opened their menus. Some of them had never stepped foot in Whitmore's before. Some had walked past it for years, believing it wasn't a place for them. But the word had spread not through Instagram or critics, but through mouths that had been fed and spirits that had been stirred. And now, the seats were full. Daniel moved with quiet professionalism at the grill, his usual snide remarks replaced with careful focus. He hadn't apologized yet. Not out loud, but he showed up on time, took every instruction, and twice that week, he'd said, "Yes, chef," without hesitation. That was enough for now. Marlena plated the first dish herself, fried green tomatoes over goat cheese grits, finished with a drizzle of honey balsamic glaze. She looked over at Ethan. "Think they're ready for this?" Ethan smiled. "Doesn't matter. We are." By 2 p.m., the restaurant had transformed into something more than fine dining. It had become familiar. Laughter replaced clinking wine glasses. Someone hummed an old gospel song near the back. A little girl danced in the aisle before her embarrassed mother gently pulled her back into the booth. And then, something strange happened. People started asking to meet the chef. One woman, in her 60s with salt and pepper hair and an arm full of church bracelets, approached the kitchen window. "Excuse me, baby," she said to a young server, "but I need to speak to whoever put that peach cobbler on my plate. I don't know if she's single, married, or mean, but I need to thank her." The server turned, startled. Marlena wiped her hands and stepped out. The woman looked at her and stopped. "You?" she asked, eyes softening. "You're the chef?" "Yes, ma'am." The woman placed a hand over her chest. "Lord have mercy. That dessert tasted like my mama singing me to sleep." Marlena didn't know what to say, so she just smiled. "Then I did my job right." "You did more than right, honey. You healed something." One by one, more guests came to the window, some just to nod, some to wave. One man tipped his hat. Another wrote a thank you note on a napkin and left it folded under his empty plate. Anna watched it all from her little table, eyes wide. Later, as things began to slow down, she ran up to Marlena and tugged on her apron. "Are all these people your friends now?" Marlena knelt down. "Maybe not friends, baby. But they see me now. And they taste what I've been trying to say." Anna tilted her head. "What have you been saying?" Marlena thought for a moment, then smiled. "That we belong here, just like everyone else." Ethan leaned in from behind. "You've said it loud and clear." As they cleaned up, Marlena stepped out to the sidewalk for some air. The sun had started to lower, bathing the street in amber. A young couple walked by and paused in front of the window. They looked at the name on the sign, looked inside, then looked at each other. "You want to try it?" the woman asked. "Think they have a dress code?" the man said. Marlena stepped forward. "Just bring your appetite." They blinked at her. "I'm the chef," she added. "You're always welcome." They smiled, nodded, and entered. Back inside, the kitchen staff had gathered around the last pot of oxtails, sharing scraps and leftovers, laughing like cousins at a family cookout. Daniel, quietly, handed Marlena a small plate. "You forgot to eat," he said. She took it slowly. "Thanks." He cleared his throat. "It was good work today. Real good." She nodded. "You did solid on the grill." He looked at her, and for the first time, his voice dropped the edge. "I didn't know this kind of cooking could live in a place like this." "It always could," she said. "Just needed someone to open the door." And with that, Marlena turned back to the kitchen, where the music played low, the ovens still glowed, and the smell of home lingered long after the plates were cleared. Monday morning came cold and gray, the kind of overcast that pressed down on the city like a weighted blanket. The streets were slick from a light rain overnight. And Whitmore's dining room, usually so alive with light and sound, sat quiet. Chairs still stacked, counters still shining from the night crew's polish. But in the kitchen, Marlena was already there. She stood alone at the stove, not cooking, just watching water come to a boil. Her mind was elsewhere, somewhere far off in Alabama, maybe. in the heat of her childhood kitchen, with her mother humming as she stirred a pot of beans. She could still hear the radio, still smell the cornbread rising in the old gas oven with the crooked door. The kitchen door creaked, and Ethan stepped in with 2 cups of coffee. "You beat me here," he said, offering her one. "I haven't left yet," Marlena replied softly. He raised an eyebrow. "I couldn't sleep," she explained. "Too many memories crowding the air." Ethan leaned against the prep table. "Good ones?" "Mostly," she said, "but some of them come with bruises, not on the skin but the kind that settle in your bones." He nodded slowly. "Ghosts." "Yeah, ghosts in the grease, I guess." There was a pause. "You've built something beautiful here," he said, voice low. "But I know that sometimes when you build something new, it shakes loose things we thought we buried." Marlena looked at him. "Like what?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, then took a slow sip of coffee. "Like shame and grief, and that feeling you don't belong even when the place has your name on the lease." She held his gaze for a long moment. "I thought I was the only one who felt that." "You're not," he said, "but you might be the only one brave enough to say it out loud." Just then, the front door swung open, and a gust of wind blew through the entry. Marlena and Ethan turned toward the sound. A figure stepped inside, tall, stiff-backed, dressed in an old brown suit that had seen better days. His cane clicked on the tile floor. "Excuse me," the man said, voice rough like gravel. "I'm looking for a Marlena Jefferson." Marlena's brow furrowed. "That's me." The man's eyes crinkled with recognition. "I hoped it was. You look just like your mama." "Clara Jefferson, right?" Marlena's breath caught. "Yes. You knew her?" "I did," he said. "Name's Walter Dean. I was her cousin. My brother and I ran a smokehouse just outside Montgomery. She used to bring you around when you were little. You tried to sell biscuits to the deacons after church." Marlena laughed, stunned. "I remember that. Nobody bought 'em. They were dry," he said with a chuckle. "But you had hustle." Ethan watched quietly, respectfully. Walter stepped closer. "I heard about this place through someone down south. Said a black woman was cooking magic in a restaurant that used to turn folks away." Marlena flushed. "We're trying to change that." "I can see that," Walter said, "but that's not all I came to say." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn envelope. "Before your mama passed," he said, "she wrote this. Told me if I ever saw you again, I should give it to you." Marlena took the envelope with trembling hands. The handwriting on the front stopped her cold. "To my girl. When you're ready." Ethan stepped back, giving her space. Marlena stared at the envelope for a long time before gently breaking the seal. The letter inside was short. "My Marlena, you were born with fire in your belly and music in your hands. I always knew you'd cook something bigger than the pain you were raised in. Don't let this world make you feel small. Don't hide your shine for anyone. And when you stand in your own kitchen, feeding folks from your soul, you'll know you made it. I'll be right there with you. Every stir, every taste. Love always, Mama." Tears welled up in Marlena's eyes. She folded the letter slowly, reverently, and placed it back in the envelope. Walter touched her shoulder. "She was proud of you before you ever put on an apron." "Thank you," Marlena whispered, "for bringing this." Walter gave a nod, tipped his hat to Ethan, and walked back into the gray morning. The door closed behind him, leaving a silence thick with memory. Ethan moved beside her. "You okay?" "I am now," Marlena said, voice soft but sure. "I've been cooking for survival my whole life. But now, I think I'm finally cooking for her." Ethan looked down at her hands, steady, strong, stained with turmeric and thyme. "Then we've got more work to do," he said gently. "We've got a line out there of people who've never tasted food that tells the truth." Marlena nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm ready." By noon, the rain had stopped. The clouds thinned, and a new smell drifted from the kitchen, something with rosemary and garlic and molasses, something that made passers-by stop and turn their heads. Inside, Marlena pinned the letter just inside her locker, near the photo of Anna in her Easter dress. Then she tied her apron tight, stepped to the line, and said 2 words that now carried the weight of legacy. "Let's cook." Lunch hour started like any other. The kitchen hummed with movement knives on cutting boards, pans hissing with oil, the rhythmic thump of kneaded dough being stretched just right. Marlena stood at the head of the line, her eyes sharp, her instructions clear, her presence grounding. Anna was out front again, this time with a small notebook and a plastic cup of lemonade. She'd taken to sketching dishes, now little crayon versions of catfish plates and peach cobblers. Every time a server passed, she'd hold up her drawing and say, "Which one of these should Mama make next?" Her charm had become part of the experience. But at 12:43 p.m., something shifted. It started with a man at table 12. Mid-50s, expensive watch, tailored blue suit. A folded Wall Street Journal beside his water glass. He had the air of someone used to commanding rooms not with kindness, but with money. He looked annoyed from the moment he sat down. The server assigned to his table, a young man named Tyler, brought him the day's menu with a warm smile. "Welcome to Whitmore's," Tyler said. "Let me know if you have any questions about today's specials." "I didn't come here for soul food," the man interrupted, not looking up. "I came here because this place used to have a reputation." Tyler paused. "It still does, sir. Just a different one." The man finally looked up. "Bring me the steak. Medium rare, no sauce. And none of that cornbread nonsense." "Yes, sir." Tyler walked back to the kitchen, tight-lipped. Marlena caught his energy the moment he stepped through the door. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Table 12, he muttered. "Real charmer." Marlena didn't flinch. "Put the steak on, medium rare, but give him the cornbread anyway. He doesn't have to eat it, but he'll smell it." Tyler cracked a grin and passed the order along. 15 minutes later, the steak was plated with charred asparagus and a small wedge of jalapeno cornbread. It was elegant, restrained, but undeniably Southern. Tyler placed it in front of the man. "This isn't what I asked for," the man said. "It's what the chef recommends, sir," Tyler replied, still smiling. The man narrowed his eyes, then took a bite of the steak. He didn't comment. Just kept eating until Anna wandered past with a fresh drawing. She paused beside his table. "Hi, sir," she chirped. "This is my mama's gumbo. Do you think it should go on the menu forever?" The man glanced down, unimpressed. "Little girls shouldn't be bothering customers," he said flatly. Anna blinked. "She's not bothering anyone." Tyler cut in gently. "She's part of the family. I didn't pay $60 to be part of someone's daycare." Anna took a step back, her lower lip starting to tremble. Tyler moved toward her, protective. "That's enough, sir." The man stood, napkin falling to the floor. "I don't care who runs this kitchen," he said loudly, enough for nearby tables to hear. "This place has gone soft. First you hire a maid as a chef, now kids run the dining room? What's next?" Gospel hour and bingo. Gasps came from the nearby booths. Before Tyler could respond, Marlena stepped through the kitchen doors. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't have to. "Sir," she said, her voice steady, "that little girl you just insulted is my daughter, and I'm the chef you called a maid." The man turned, startled. "Well, if the shoe fits..." "You're done," Marlena said. "You can leave now." "I'm not finished with my meal." "Oh yes you are." Ethan appeared then, silent and calm. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. The man scoffed. "Only that you've let standards drop through the floor. This used to be a real restaurant. Now it's a charity." "Oh." Ethan stepped forward, his tone gentle but razor sharp. "This place was built for people who come hungry for food and for something deeper. If you can't appreciate that, you're welcome to take your appetite elsewhere." The man looked around the room. No one backed him up. Not one person. He grabbed his coat and stormed out. Silence held the room for a moment before someone at table 9 began clapping. Then another. And another. Within seconds, half the dining room was on their feet in applause, not raucous, but affirming. Marlena stood frozen for a second, then looked down at Anna, who had tucked herself against her leg. "You okay, baby?" she whispered. Anna nodded slowly. "He was mean." "Yes, he was. But you were brave." Marlena knelt and hugged her tight. "So were you." Later, back in the kitchen, the staff worked with a kind of quiet fire. No one talked much, but the movements were sharper, the pride visible. Daniel came over to Marlena during cleanup. "I heard what happened." Marlena wiped her hands. "It's over. I used to think standing up like that was about ego," he said. But today, it looked like something else. She looked at him. It's about showing people the door when they try to shrink you. He nodded, thoughtful. I'm still learning, he admitted. She smiled. So am I. Oh, that night. Ethan walked Anna to the car, while Marlena closed down the kitchen. As they waited by the curb, Anna asked softly, "Will he come back? That man?" Ethan shook his head. People like that don't usually come back once they realize they can't scare you. Anna looked up. Mama didn't even yell. No, Ethan said. She didn't need to. Real strength isn't loud. Anna thought about that as she climbed into her booster seat. Inside, Marlena turned off the last kitchen light and stood for a moment in the dark. The faint smell of roasted garlic still lingering in the air. She thought about all the doors she'd had slammed in her face, and the one she just closed with her head held high. Tomorrow would come, another pot to stir, another challenge waiting. But tonight she cooked justice and served it hot. 2 days after the incident at table 12, Marlena stood in the back alley behind Whitmore's, apron dusted with flour, sleeves rolled up, a cigarette burning between 2 fingers she hadn't used for smoking in over 15 years. She wasn't proud of it, but the silence back there, the cold bite of air against her neck, and the tiny red ember gave her 5 uninterrupted minutes to breathe. The confrontation still lingered in her bones, not because she doubted what she'd done, but because it had stirred something older, something deeper. That voice the man used? It was the same voice she'd heard too many times in her life. At job interviews, on buses, in line at grocery stores. It had followed her for decades. And yet, that day, she didn't flinch. Maybe that was what was keeping her up at night. The weight of having stood tall. Not with anger, but with authority. She took one last drag and flicked the cigarette into the bucket by the dumpster just as Ethan walked around the corner. I wondered where you disappeared to, he said. Don't tell Anna, she replied, brushing her hands on her pants. Wasn't planning on it. He stepped beside her. Rough night? Not rough, she said. Just loud in my head. You thinking about him again? No, she said. Then hesitated. Yes. But not just him. Ethan waited. I've had to justify every job I ever had, she said. Even when I cleaned floors. I was expected to smile and thank people for letting me scrub under their feet. But now that I've got something I earned, the criticism hits harder. Because they're not just doubting my skills, they're doubting my right to be here. He nodded slowly. Then let them doubt. You've already proved them wrong. She looked at him. You always this good with words? He grinned. Only when I'm talking to chefs who scare me. She laughed, softly, and they went back inside. The kitchen was already alive with prep. Daniel was at the butcher's station, slicing brisket with rhythmic confidence. Marjorie worked on her signature pecan tart, adjusting the spice levels in the candied topping. Even the dishwashers moved with a new sense of pride. But Marlena had something else on her mind that morning, something she hadn't shared yet. At the morning staff meeting, she cleared her throat and tapped her spoon on a steel counter. I've been thinking, she said. This restaurant needs a signature dish. Something no one else can touch. Something that carries us in every bite. A murmur passed through the team. You mean like a permanent staple? Daniel asked. Exactly, Marlena said. Something that tells the story of who we are. Tyler raised his hand. Like your mama's gumbo? Marlena smiled. Gumbo's sacred, but I want to build something new. A dish born here, not just from me but from all of us. The room went quiet. Then Marjorie said, I got a sweet potato casserole my auntie used to make for funerals. Might not be fine dining, but I swear it stopped more crying than sermons ever did. Laughter rippled through the kitchen. Daniel added, my grandmother used to do a molasses-glazed meatloaf. Nothing fancy. But the smell of it? You'd fight your own cousin for the last piece. Marlena nodded. Good. Bring your memories. Bring your stories. We're not building a dish, we're building legacy. They agreed to meet that night after service, each bringing one recipe, one flavor, or one memory to share. It felt more like a family gathering than a kitchen meeting. That night, long after the last guest had left and the dining room had gone dark, the kitchen glowed with warm light. Marlena laid out notebooks and small plates. Ethan brought in 3 bottles of red wine. Even Anna, wrapped in her blanket, sat at the counter with her rabbit in her lap, wide-eyed. One by one, the staff came forward. Tyler brought a pepper vinegar sauce his uncle used on collards. Marjorie made cornbread pudding with a cinnamon cream drizzle. Daniel, surprisingly, offered up a smoked tomato chutney that had roots in his great-grandmother's New Orleans kitchen. They tasted. They shared. They laughed. And slowly, the dish began to take shape. A glazed meatloaf base, tender but firm, flavored with molasses, thyme, and black pepper. Sweet potato mash, not overly sugared, balanced. Earthy, with a whisper of orange zest. A drizzle of tomato chutney reduction to cut through the richness. And on top, just a curl of pickled okra. Like a nod to the ancestors watching from heaven, Marlena tasted the final composition and closed her eyes. "That's it," she whispered. "That's the one." Ethan took a bite and grinned. "It tastes like home, but elevated. Familiar, but defiant." They agreed to name it the Table 12. A quiet, poetic clapback to the man who tried to shrink them. By Friday, it hit the menu. Customers asked about the name. Some were told the story. Others were just told, "It's for the ones who doubted us." The dish sold out before closing. And with every plate sent out, Marlena felt like she was sending a message not with anger, not with vengeance, but with flavor. They couldn't erase her. They couldn't silence her. They could only taste her story and decide if they were ready for seconds. Saturday brought a steady stream of customers, regulars, and first-timers alike, each drawn in by the hum of something real, something comforting. Word had spread fast about the new signature dish. The Table 12 was already becoming a phenomenon. Guests ordered it with reverence, spoke about it in hushed tones, and left cleaner plates than Marlena had ever seen. But just after 3 p.m., as the kitchen settled into its late afternoon lull, something shifted in the air. Tyler came into the back with a strange look on his face. "Marlena," he said quietly, "you have visitors." She looked up from her prep station. "Customers?" "Not exactly." He stepped aside, and 2 sharply dressed individuals walked in. A woman in a beige trench coat with a legal pad in her hand, and a man in a dark suit with a clipboard, and the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Marlena Jefferson?" the woman asked. "That's me," Marlena said, wiping her hands and stepping forward. "I'm Sarah Whitman, City Inspections and Food Service Compliance," she said. "This is my colleague, Mr. Hayes." Marlena's stomach tensed. "Something wrong?" "Nothing at all," Hayes said too quickly. "We're just following up on a few flagged reports. Routine." Ethan walked in from the office, sensing the tone immediately. "Afternoon," he said calmly. "I'm Ethan Whitmore. I own the place." "What's the issue?" "Just procedural," Sarah said, flashing her badge. "We received an anonymous complaint. Said this establishment was operating with unlicensed staff and serving meals without proper allergy disclosures." "That's nonsense," Ethan replied. "Our paperwork is airtight." We'd like to take a look anyway," she said. "Now." Marlena exchanged a glance with Ethan. "Go ahead," she said, stepping aside. "We've got nothing to hide." The next hour was a whirlwind of drawer checks, freezer inventories, thermometer readings, and clipboard scribbles. The inspectors moved with efficiency, but there was something pointed in their questions, something that felt less like procedure and more like probing. "Who preps the sauces?" Hayes asked. "Do you use gloves?" "Yes," Marlena replied, keeping her voice even. "Everything's labeled, dated, and temp. Checked. Want to see the log?" He didn't answer, just kept writing. Sarah flipped through the allergy disclosure binder and frowned. "Some of these look handwritten." "They are," Marlena said. "We update them daily. Fresh menu, fresh notes." She didn't say what she was really thinking, that most high-end kitchens didn't care half as much about allergens as she did that she'd built the system herself after a child had once reacted to a pecan tart at her last job. But something told her these folks weren't looking for excellence. They were looking for flaws. When the inspection finally wrapped, Sarah closed her folder. "We'll file a report," she said. "If anything comes up, you'll be notified." Then they left, cool and silent as shadows. As the door shut behind them, Marlena exhaled. What the hell was that? Daniel muttered. Ethan's jaw was tight. That wasn't routine. Someone sent them. Who? Tyler asked. Marlena already knew. I've got a good guess, she said. The man from table 12. You think he's got that kind of pull? Marjorie asked. Marlena looked around. Men like that always do. When they lose power in the room, they try to take it back through paper. Bureaucracy's just another weapon. Should we lawyer up? Daniel asked. Ethan nodded. Already made the call. They went back to work, but the mood was rattled. Trust didn't come easy in kitchens like these. For every success, there was a shadow waiting, someone convinced you didn't deserve the space you took up. Later that night, after service, Marlena sat with Anna in the back office. The little girl was drawing again, this time a big table with all the staff seated around it, plates piled high, laughter drawn in colorful waves above their heads. Why do they want to hurt us? Anna asked, not looking up. Marlena froze. Who told you someone wanted to hurt us? She asked. I heard Daniel say the suit man sent those people. Anna replied. Because we made him mad. Marlena sighed. Some people don't like when others stand up for themselves. They think if they can't scare you to your face, they'll try to scare you behind your back. Are we scared? Marlena wrapped her arms around her daughter. Maybe a little. But we're not running. Good, Anna said, because I'm not done drawing my menu. Marlena chuckled, her chest heavy and full all at once. In the coming days, 2 more inspectors would arrive, one for building safety, the other from the fire marshal's office. Both random. Both overly thorough. Ethan stayed calm, his legal team quick to respond. But Marlena knew what this really was. A test. Not of paperwork. Of will. And she would not break. So she doubled down. Checked every label twice. Held a surprise training for the staff on allergy protocol. Posted cleaning schedules where everyone could see. If they were going to fight her with systems, she'd fight back with excellence. On the 4th day, a woman in her 60s came in. No reservation. No fanfare. She wore a nurse's badge on her belt and had calluses on her hands. I heard about what y'all are going through, she told Ethan softly. Figured the best way to fight darkness is to feed the light. She left a $100 tip on a $20 meal. Others followed. Word spread that Marlena was under pressure. And instead of shrinking, the community showed up. Every seat filled. People waited outside. Some brought flowers. Others brought recipes from their childhoods, hoping to see them on the chalkboard menu one day. Marlena stood in the kitchen through it all, head high, hands steady, because she knew something now that couldn't be unlearned. They could send inspectors. They could file complaints. But they couldn't file away her spirit. And they couldn't unteach the city how to love food that told the truth. It was nearly dusk when Marlena found the envelope. It had been slid under the back door sometime between the afternoon lull and dinner rush. The paper was thick, cream-colored, folded neatly with an embossed crest on the seal gold ink, elegant, impersonal. Her name was written across the front in tight, deliberate cursive, Marlena Jefferson. She held it in her flour-dusted fingers for a moment, not opening it right away. Her gut told her what it was, something calculated, not kind. She placed it gently on the counter next to the cooling rack and returned to stirring the pot of seafood gumbo, the scent of bay leaves and andouille sausage thick in the air. Later, after service, when the kitchen was quiet and Anna was asleep in the office cot, Marlena opened the envelope under the dim glow of the desk lamp. It wasn't a letter from the city. It wasn't from a lawyer or an inspector. It was from him, the man from table 12. His real name, printed in blue ink on monogrammed letterhead, was Bradford T. Coleman III. Dear Miss Jefferson, it seems I may have underestimated your resilience. The more I hear about your continued success, the more I'm reminded that grit is not a substitute for refinement. I've invested in enough restaurants to recognize when one has reached its expiration date, no matter how much local attention it may garner. You and your establishment are becoming a distraction not just to me, but to others who have a vested interest in the standard this neighborhood has maintained for generations. You've built a kitchen, not a legacy. That requires more than comfort food and sentimental applause. You should consider your position carefully. No empire has ever survived on heart alone. Sincerely, Bradford T. Coleman III. Marlena read it twice. Her pulse didn't spike. Her breath didn't quicken. She folded the letter neatly and placed it back in the envelope. Then, without ceremony, she tossed it into the trash can. But she didn't feel relief. She felt something colder. Not fear, but a deep, steady awareness. This man wasn't going to stop, not because she'd wronged him, but because her very existence in that space, her authority, her pride, her community threatened something he believed only belonged to people like him. She went home that night and barely slept. By sunrise, she was back in the kitchen. She wasn't angry. She was focused. At the morning meeting, she held up a menu draft. "I've been thinking," she said, "about our brunch service. We've never done it. And it's time." Marjorie raised an eyebrow. "You serious? Brunch is its own beast." "I know," Marlena said, "but I also know it's the meal that brings in a different crowd. The kind who don't come in for soul food at night but will line up for sweet cream waffles at noon." Tyler leaned forward. "What are you thinking? Biscuits and chicken?" "More than that," Marlena said. "Sweet tea mimosas, shrimp and grits with tomato bacon jam, red velvet pancakes with honey butter. A menu that says we're not just good at what we do, we own what we do." Daniel nodded. "Let's give them something they can't steal." They set the launch for 2 weeks out. Flyers were printed, menus drafted. Ethan worked connections to get them a small feature in the Tribune's food column. It wasn't splashy, but it was enough. Every night, Marlena worked later than usual. She tested batter recipes and glaze consistencies, stayed long after the dishwashers had gone. She read articles about brunch service, made notes on flow and staffing. She was building not just a menu, but a message. And on the Friday before launch, just as she was finishing a test batch of praline bread pudding French toast, a man in a charcoal suit walked in holding a manila envelope. He didn't introduce himself. He simply said, "This is a courtesy copy. From Mr. Coleman's counsel." Marlena took it wordlessly. Inside was a letter of intent to sue for defamation, alleging that the Table 12 name and the backstory associated with it was a direct attack on Coleman's character. The letter didn't demand money. It demanded a retraction. A name change. Silence. Ethan read it twice and laughed bitterly. "He's trying to rewrite a story he wrote himself." He wants to erase it," Marlena said. "He wants to make me question if it ever happened." "But you won't," Ethan said. "No," she answered. "I won't." That night, they made one change. The Table 12 dish stayed on the menu, but now the description read, "For the table that tried to shut us up. For the voices that never stopped speaking truth. For every chair we had to build ourselves when they wouldn't make room. This one's for you." On Sunday, brunch launched. People lined up before the doors opened. They came in suits and in jeans, in church dresses and hoodies, retired teachers, postal workers, young couples with babies, elderly men with walking sticks and memories in their eyes. The sweet tea mimosas sold out before noon. By 2 p.m., they'd run out of chicken. At 3 p.m., Marlena walked through the dining room to cheers and handshakes. One woman pulled her close and whispered, "You remind me of my sister. She cooked through cancer, said it was the only way she felt whole." Another man handed her a photo of his mother with a note on the back. "She would have loved your food. Thank you for reminding me what it tastes like." As Marlena stood in the middle of it all, surrounded by smells and sounds and the buzz of joy, she felt something anchored deep inside her. Not just pride, not just defiance. Belonging. No letter could take this away. No suit could erase what had been built in fire, in sweat, in soul. This was no longer just her fight. It was their story now, and they were just getting started. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the letter came from the Department of Public Development. Unlike the previous threats, this one wasn't wrapped in threats or veiled insults. It was a simple notice. The building Whitmore's occupied was under review for eminent domain reassessment. The city claimed there was interest in revitalizing the block with a modern parking structure. No firm decisions yet, but the process had begun. Marlena read the letter 3 times. Her hands didn't tremble, but her jaw clenched until her teeth ached. Ethan arrived an hour later, coat still on, hair damp from the early fall drizzle. "They're not subtle anymore," she said. handing him the notice. He scanned it quickly, then looked up. This goes deeper than Coleman. You think he pulled strings? I think someone owes him favors, Ethan muttered. And now we're the price. They sat in silence for a moment, the kitchen strangely still. It wasn't service hours yet. The early morning prep team was chopping, but the energy was subdued, like even the garlic knew something had shifted. Marlena stood slowly. Where's room B12? Ethan blinked. What? On the city council building floor plan. Where's room B12? That's the zoning and planning archives room. Why? Marlena peeled off her apron. Because if they're playing this game, I'm playing back. But I'm not playing blind. That afternoon, Marlena walked into City Hall like she belonged there because, in a way, she did. This city had fed her and failed her. Now, she was feeding it back. The least it could offer was a file. Room B12 was in the basement, dimly lit and heavy with the smell of old paper and bureaucracy. A clerk at the desk barely looked up. I need property records for 622 Walton Avenue, Marlena said, calm but clear, filed under commercial holdings. The clerk mumbled, back cabinets, right side, good luck. Marlena pulled on a pair of worn gloves from a box near the wall and began digging. Folder after folder, page after page, leases, transfers, title amendments. She wasn't entirely sure what she was looking for. Only that her gut told her it was here. Then she found it. A document from 1994. A memo marked, Private Transfer Non-Standard Zoning. Her eyes narrowed. The original deed for the building had included a clause that any transfer of ownership within 50 years required community approval by majority vote from the district's Small Business Council. It was a protection clause, a shield against predatory redevelopment. But the clause had been buried. Never enforced. Ethan's family had owned the building before it changed hands 5 years ago. Somehow, that clause had been ignored. She took a photo of the document with her phone. Her hands were steady now. Try to erase me, she muttered. See what happens. Back at the restaurant, Ethan examined the photo, stunned. If this holds up, they can't redevelop without that council vote, Marlena said. But the Small Business Council hasn't convened in years. It's basically symbolic now. Then let's bring it back to life. The next 10 days were a flurry of calls, coffee meetings, and unexpected reunions. Tyler found an old teacher of his who used to own a bookstore in the district. Marjorie's cousin had run a barber shop on the corner for decades and still paid business taxes on the license. Ethan tracked down a baker who'd shut down during the pandemic but never gave up her license. Her cinnamon rolls, it turned out, were legendary. One by one, they reached out to former council members, some of them surprised to know the clause still existed. Some wanted to help, others needed convincing. But Marlena was relentless. She spoke at town halls. She knocked on doors. She invited every one of them to brunch and served the table 12 with stories behind every bite. This isn't about a building, she told them. This is about voice, about place. About the right to stand where we've built something without having it taken from us the moment it makes someone else uncomfortable. It was never angry, never disparity, just honest. And that, more than anything, moved them. The day of the vote arrived with early frost on the windows. Marlena wore a dark blue coat, boots polished, and Anna holding her hand like a ribbon of courage. The meeting was held in the old community center auditorium. Half the chairs were empty, but enough were filled by faces she recognized. The grocer who once gave her credit when she was short on money. The florist who'd lost her husband last year and brought lilies to Whitmore's every Sunday since. Even Walter Dean, her mother's cousin, was there. Sharp as ever, in a pressed suit. The vote was quick. Unanimous. The redevelopment was blocked. The clause, long buried, had been honored. Marlena sat down only when it was done. Not because she was tired, but because, finally, her knees felt light. Ethan sat beside her, breath held, then slowly released. You saved this place, he said. No, she replied. We did. That night, back at Whitmore's, the staff stayed late, even after the last guest left. No music played, no formal speeches, just laughter. Jokes. Someone poured bourbon. Daniel raised a glass. To the ones who tried to erase us. They clinked their glasses. Marlena turned to Anna, who was curled up in a chair with her sketch pad. "What are you drawing tonight, baby?" Anna held up the paper. It was a picture of the restaurant, not from the outside, but the inside, with people around every table. Each one smiling. Each plate full. There, near the kitchen, was a tiny drawing of Marlena and Ethan standing side by side. Above them, in a rainbow of crayon letters, she had written, "Home." Marlena looked at it, her throat tightening, because somehow, in all the battles, all the noise, all the letters and inspections and quiet threats, this little girl had seen the truth. They weren't just protecting a restaurant, they were protecting belonging. And now, it had a name, and it wasn't going anywhere. 3 weeks after the vote saved Whitmore's from redevelopment, the air had begun to shift. Not in a loud or obvious way, but in a quiet unease that settled behind the eyes of everyone who worked in the kitchen. Tyler had stopped whistling. Marjorie, normally humming while folding napkins, was quiet. Even Ethan moved through the restaurant with a tension in his shoulders he tried to hide. Something was coming. It arrived, as danger often does, in the middle of a calm. A bright Sunday morning, golden light streaming through the dining room windows, gospel playing low in the background. Anna drawing behind the bar, as Marlena stirred a pot of grits that tasted like memory. Then came the smoke. At first, just a faint curl from the hallway near the supply closet, barely noticeable. But when Tyler walked past, he froze. "Something's burning," he said. Marlena turned, sniffed the air, and felt her stomach drop. "Check the closet now." Tyler sprinted. Marlena followed, throwing off her apron, heart pounding. As they flung open the door, a wave of black smoke rushed past them, thick and bitter. The fire had started near the breaker panel, licking up the drywall, hungry, fast. "Call 911, Marlena shouted, already grabbing the fire extinguisher. "Everyone out now." The kitchen burst into motion. Staff grabbed each other, guided guests toward exits. Ethan scooping Anna into his arms and shielding her from the growing smoke. Dishes clattered to the floor. Someone screamed. The fire alarm blared. Marlena sprayed the extinguisher into the flames, coughing, eyes watering. It slowed the fire for a heartbeat, but only that. When she heard sirens in the distance, she finally let go, stumbling outside as heat chased her through the doorway. Ethan caught her arm, pulling her away just as flames licked the archway. The fire department arrived within minutes, but the damage was already done. The back hallway, the pantry, the breaker room all charred. The kitchen scorched in places, soaked in others. The dining room remained mostly untouched. But the smell of smoke was thick, and the air tasted like ash. No one was hurt, but everyone was shaken. Later that night, long after the fire trucks had gone and the crowd had cleared, Marlena stood alone in the empty dining room, surrounded by soot and silence. The chairs were upturned, tables half wiped. The painting of the Louisiana bayou her grandmother had given her now sagged on the wall, stained with smoke. Ethan stepped in beside her. Investigators said it was electrical. Faulty wiring near the old breaker. She didn't answer right away. "And you believe that?" she asked softly. "I want to," he admitted. "But, I don't know." They stood there for a long moment, the hum of distant traffic the only sound. Finally, Marlena said, "It's like every time we rise, something tries to pull us back under." He turned to her. "And every time, we don't let it." She nodded slowly. "But it hurts, Ethan. Not just the fire, the exhaustion, the constant proving, the rebuilding. I'm tired of climbing ladders only to have someone set fire to the wall." He didn't speak for a moment. Then let's build with fireproof walls." The following morning, the city sent an investigator. A woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a calm tone. "We'll file it as electrical, unless evidence shows otherwise," she said. Marlena narrowed her eyes. "And if it was intentional?" She shrugged. "Then we have a different kind of problem." But she didn't sound convinced either way. Marlena walked her through the damage, pointing out the spot near the breaker panel. She didn't accuse anyone, but she made sure the woman understood what was at stake. After the investigator left, Marlena sat outside on the curb, hands clasped, elbows on her knees. Anna came out and sat beside her, quietly offering a juice box. "Is our place broken?" Anna asked. Marlena nodded. "A little, but not all the way." Anna leaned against her shoulder. "You'll fix it. You always fix things." Marlena wrapped an arm around her, blinking away tears. "No, baby," she whispered. "We will." By the end of the week, a GoFundMe page Ethan quietly created had spread through the community like wildfire. The headline read, "Help us rebuild Whitmore's, where every plate tells a story." Within 48 hours, it raised nearly $40,000. Old customers, neighbors, even strangers who had only heard the story donated. Some gave $5, some gave $500. One man left no name, only a note. "For my grandmother's cornbread and the dignity you gave it." Local news stations called. A journalist asked Marlena to speak on camera. She declined. "We don't need to perform our pain," she said. "We just need to keep cooking." So while contractors repaired the walls and rewired the kitchen, the staff gathered at Marjorie's cousin's diner, 2 blocks down. He offered the space after hours. They turned it into a makeshift kitchen, selling boxed lunches, comfort food, and weekend brunch to go. And every box had a note. "Thank you for believing in us. This is not the end. This is the beginning of something stronger." Marlena cooked side by side with her team every night. And every night, they shared stories of the early days, of how far they'd come, of the people they were before Whitmore's gave them purpose. Daniel told a story about how he almost quit cooking to work construction, until Marlena made him headline cook for a week and let him fail safely. Tyler confessed he'd once slept in his car outside the restaurant because home was too far to drive. Even Marjorie teared up recalling the time Marlena stayed late after her shift, just to make her a pot of soup when her son was sick. "This place," Marjorie said, "ain't just a kitchen. It's a witness. It saw us become who we are." They toasted with sweet tea and orange slices. Outside, the world still turned. But inside that borrowed kitchen, something powerful was rising, smoke in the wind. Yes, but this time, it wasn't destruction. It was resilience. And it smelled like a second chance. 2 months passed. The ash had been cleared. The smoke-stained walls were painted anew. The charred wood near the breaker room was replaced with brick strong, fireproof, permanent. But what came back to life inside Whitmore's wasn't just the building. It was the soul of the place. Stronger, deeper, more rooted. The reopening wasn't flashy. There was no red carpet, no ribbon cutting. Just a hand-painted sign on the front window that read, "We're home again." The first night back, Marlena arrived early. She walked through the kitchen alone, running her fingers over the smooth counter, now polished like glass. She opened the walk-in cooler, checked the temperature, stirred the gumbo pot even though it wasn't hers to stir anymore. Her title was now executive chef, and co-owner Ethan had insisted, but she still felt like the same girl who once chopped onions behind someone else's spotlight. Anna ran in, her curls bouncing, wearing her little apron that said sous chef in training. "Mom, the reporter lady's outside." She brought a camera. Marlena groaned playfully. "Didn't I say no cameras?" Anna giggled. "She says she just wants a photo of the sign. Not your face." But she might be lying. They both laughed. Guests arrived one by one, then by twos, then in small clusters of familiar faces. The air buzzed not with spectacle, but with something quieter, more powerful. Belonging. The dining room was exactly the same, but somehow, it felt different. The lights seemed warmer. The chairs seemed to lean in closer. On the far wall, where the old painting had been too damaged to save, now hung a framed collage photos of the team, of Anna, of community members who helped raise the roof when they had no roof to stand under, and above it, in thick white letters, "A seat for everyone." Ethan stood near the host stand, nodding to guests, offering smiles with his usual quiet grace. But Marlena could see it in his eyes. He was proud. Not of the building, not even of the success, but of her. At 6:15 sharp, the first plate of the night came out, the table 12, reborn with even more care. Beneath it, a folded note read, "To every fire that tried to stop us, you only taught us to burn brighter." Marjorie carried it to the couple at corner booth 4, the same spot where Marlena once stood shaking, holding Anna's hand while a manager yelled about dress codes. Now, a young black woman in a navy pantsuit sat there, holding her grandmother's hand. They bowed their heads before the first bite. Marlena blinked fast, heart tightening. Back in the kitchen, Tyler called out times with energy that bounced off the walls. Daniel manned the grill like a symphony conductor. Even the newest dishwasher, a wiry teenager named Jonah, moved with rhythm and purpose. Everyone had come back. No one had walked away. Midway through service, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Bradford T. Coleman III. He wore the same expensive coat, the same carefully calculated smirk. But this time, there was no reservation. No table waiting. He just stood near the entryway, arms crossed, watching. Ethan saw him first. "You want a table?" Ethan asked, neutral. Coleman smiled thinly. "No, just passing through." Marlena stepped out from the kitchen then, wiping her hands on a towel. "You looking for something?" she asked. "Not anymore," he said. "Looks like you've made your point." She held his gaze. Wasn't trying to make a point, just trying to make dinner. He chuckled once. "You know, you could have sold. I had buyers lined up." "I know," she said. "You still can." She tilted her head slightly. "Why would I sell the table I built with my own hands?" Coleman didn't answer. He looked around the room, at the full seats, the laughter, the joy that no money could manufacture. Then he turned and left. He never came back. Later that night, after the last dish had been served and the staff gathered for a quiet toast, Marlena raised her glass of sweet tea high. "To the ones who believed in us," she said. "To the ones who doubted us. And to every person who ever sat at a table thinking they didn't belong, we saved you a seat." The room was still for a second, then filled with applause, laughter, and a few quiet tears. Anna leaned into her mother's side. "Can I say something too?" Marlena smiled. "Of course." Anna stood on a chair so everyone could see her. "My mommy didn't just fix the kitchen. She fixed everything. Even the broken hearts." No one spoke. There was nothing to say. Just a collective inhale. The kind people take when they know they're witnessing something rare. Something real. After the crowd cleared and the lights dimmed, Marlena sat alone in the dining room, staring at the empty plates and glasses. Ethan came over with 2 cups of coffee. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm better than okay," she said softly. "I'm home." He raised his coffee cup. "To home." She clinked her cup against his. Outside, the wind shifted. No longer heavy with smoke, but carrying something else, something like peace. Inside, the lights remained on just a little longer, because some places aren't meant to close, and some stories aren't meant to end. Autumn deepened its grip on the city. The leaves outside Whitmore's turned shades of fire, amber, rust, cinnamon, and the air carried the scent of earth and endings. But inside the restaurant, something new had begun to simmer. A gentle, persistent idea that had taken root in Marlena's mind. It started one night when Anna climbed onto her lap in the office, holding an old notebook bound in cracked red leather. "Grandma left this in our attic," Anna said, thumbing through yellowed pages. "There's recipes in here, and stories, and even little drawings." Marlena took the notebook in her hands gently, as if afraid it might crumble. It wasn't just old, it was ancestral. Her mother's handwriting, her grandmother's notes in the margins, little doodles of okra pods and cast-iron pans, and side comments like, "Don't skip the bay leaf, your granddaddy will notice." She turned to a page labeled, "Sunday pot roast for the souls we miss." Below it, in neat script, "Cook slow. Remember faster. Serve hot with laughter." Something in Marlena's chest shifted. This wasn't just a recipe book. It was a map. That night, after Anna fell asleep curled against her side, Marlena sat in the kitchen and flipped through every page. Each dish came with memory. She remembered kneeling on a stool beside her mother, learning how to peel sweet potatoes. She remembered the sound of the pressure cooker hissing like a train about to take them somewhere better. She remembered the silence at the table after her father died. and how gumbo had filled the space with warmth no words could provide. The next morning, she brought the notebook to Ethan. "I want to make this into something," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "A menu?" "No," she smiled. "A book. A real one. Recipes, yes, but stories too. The food is just the language. The story is the truth." Ethan turned the notebook over in his hands. "You want to publish? I want to preserve. For people like us. For kids like Anna. For the ones who never got to sit at tables like these." He nodded slowly. "You're not just building a kitchen anymore. I'm building a legacy." Within weeks, the plan was in motion. They partnered with a local independent publisher, a small team run by a mother-daughter duo out of a brownstone in Southside. They loved the idea, especially the way each recipe was tied to a specific moment in Marlena's life. The working title was simple: Stirring the Soul, Recipes and Remembrance from Whitmore's. Marjorie became the food stylist. Tyler helped test every recipe. Daniel contributed kitchen tricks learned from his time with his grandfather, a line cook during the Great Migration. Ethan handled the logistics. He built a pre-order website, contacted local bookstores, and managed the production schedule. Anna, of course, insisted on adding illustrations. "Food tastes better when you see the love," she explained, her little fingers busy with crayons and watercolor. Soon, the kitchen was filled with more than food. It was filled with reflection. Marlena wrote every night, her fingers stained with ink and memory. Some entries made her laugh. Some made her cry. All of them were honest. One story was about her first real Thanksgiving after her mother's stroke, how she burned the yams and forgot the rolls but still managed to make her auntie weep over the greens. Another recounted a night when the gas was shut off and they cooked everything over one electric hot plate. "That stew fed us for 2 days, she wrote. And for 2 days, no one complained. Because love doesn't need perfect conditions. But one night, after reviewing the chapter about her earliest days working behind the scenes in that very kitchen, she paused. She thought of Teresa, the woman who used to run the place before everything changed. Teresa who, despite her own struggles, had whispered once to Marlena, "Don't ever let them tell you what belongs on your plate, baby. You make your own table." Marlena included that quote on the dedication page. "To the ones who taught me to cook, and the ones who taught me to stay." As winter crept in, the book neared completion. They hosted a small launch event at the restaurant. No suits, no sponsors, just food, laughter, and pages read aloud between bites. An elderly man approached her with trembling hands and said, "Your story about Sunday cornbread, my mama made that same thing. I haven't tasted it since '78. Thank you for bringing her back for a minute." A woman in her 50s hugged Marlena tightly. "I gave this to my daughter. She's in culinary school and never felt like there was space for her. Now she sees your name, your face, and she believes again." Later that night, when the last guest had gone and the only light came from the glow above the counter, Marlena sat at table 12, now polished and shining with memory. Ethan sat across from her. "You know," he said, "there's a wait list now. For brunch." She smirked. "Let him wait." He raised his glass. "To the book." "To the books, plural," she said. "The one we wrote, and the one we're still living." Anna ran over, holding a mock-up of the book's cover. She'd scribbled hearts around the title. "Can we read from it at school?" she asked. Marlena smiled. "Of course, baby, but only if you read the part about the molasses bread." Anna giggled. "That's the one I spilled apple juice on." "Exactly," Marlena said, pulling her into her lap. "That's what makes it yours." And just like that, the night settled around them not as an end, but as a soft landing before the next beginning. Because when the food is honest and the story is true, there will always be another reader, another guest, another hungry soul in search of something more than just a meal. There will always be another table, and at Whitmore's, there will always be a seat waiting. Winter wrapped the city in a soft silence. Snow dusted the sidewalks, and breath turned to mist in the early mornings. Inside Whitmore's, the warmth of the kitchen became more than heat, it became refuge. Patrons came bundled in scarves and stories, seeking not just food, but reminder. the kind that tasted like their grandmother's collard greens or a forgotten Sunday roast. The cookbook had found its way into hundreds of homes. Marlena's inbox filled with letters handwritten, typed, sometimes even voice recordings, sharing how one recipe or another reopened a door in someone's heart. One woman in Mississippi wrote, "I hadn't touched my mother's skillet in 10 years. Your cornbread made me brave. The restaurant thrived, yes. But it was never just about business. It was about roots, about memory, about resistance, quiet and consistent. But even in the glow of new beginnings, the past has a way of finding the door." It was a Thursday morning when the knock came. Marlena was in the back, teaching Anna how to fold napkins into cranes. When Marjorie peeked her head around the corner, "There's a man out front," she said, hesitant. "Says he knew your mama." Marlena wiped her hands and stepped into the dining room. The man stood near the window, coat damp from snow, hat in his hand. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much but kept looking anyway. "Ma'am," he said when he saw her. "Name's Reggie Clay." The name didn't register, but something in her chest stirred. "I used to live a few houses down from your mama back in Baton Rouge. We were more than neighbors, less than family. She once gave me a bowl of stew that stopped me from doing something stupid." Marlena didn't know what to say. She gestured to a seat. He sat slowly. "I didn't come to make trouble. I read about you in a paper my niece showed me. The cookbook, the restaurant. Saw your mama's handwriting in that photo and I had to come see." Marlena studied him carefully. "You came all this way for that?" "I came because I owe your mama a thank you I never gave. And because," he paused, voice hitching, "because I think we might be kin." The air between them shifted. Marlena leaned back. "Excuse me?" Reggie pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. A letter, yellowed, soft at the edges. He placed it on the table like something sacred. "She wrote this in '89. Told me about you. About a girl with eyes that saw too much too soon. Said if I ever got my act together, I should come say hello. Took me 35 years. Marlena stared at the paper. Her fingers didn't move. "I'm not here to ask for anything," Reggie added. "Not forgiveness, not money. Just a seat at the edge of your story, if there's room." She finally picked up the letter, her mother's handwriting, unmistakable, the same loops and slants that danced across her old recipe pages. She read slowly. It wasn't long, but it was real. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say what you feel," he replied. "That's all any of us can do." Ethan watched from across the room. He didn't approach, just gave Marlena a small nod, letting her know he was there if she needed him. Marlena folded the letter and placed it on her lap. "You got kids?" "One son. Never met him. Too many bridges burned." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe you understand," she said quietly, "what it means to build something that can't be taken away." Reggie exhaled. "I'm starting to." She stood up. "Come back Saturday night. There's a table by the kitchen we save for family. If you're not ready, I'll understand. But if you are, we'll feed you right." Reggie stood too. "I'll be here." He left without fanfare, and Marlena sat back down, letter in hand, heart heavy but not broken. That Saturday night, the snow came down in earnest. Thick flakes blanketed the street, turning the city into a hushed cathedral of white. But inside Whitmore's, the light glowed warmer than ever. The staff worked like music, each movement part of a greater rhythm. Tyler plated gumbo like artwork. Marjorie hummed a hymn while folding napkins. Anna buzzed from table to table, delivering drawings of snowmen and steaming bowls. At 7:18, the door opened. Reggie stepped in, shaking snow from his shoulders. He wore a dark blazer, slightly too big, and a tie that hadn't seen daylight in years. Marlena met him at the host stand. "You came," she said. "I said I would." She led him to the table near the kitchen. Not front and center. Not hidden. Just home. Ethan brought out the first dish himself, smoked catfish with mustard greens and sweet potatoes. Reggie's eyes welled up. "Tastes like the river," he said. Marlena sat with him for a few minutes, not speaking much, just sharing air, sharing memory. When she got up to return to the kitchen, Reggie reached for her hand. "I missed so much," he said. She didn't pull away. "But you came back to the table," she said. "That's where we start." He nodded, and that night, in the hush of snow and stories, Whitmore's did what it always had. It healed in ways words couldn't, because sometimes the table is more than a place to eat. Sometimes it's the altar where the past is finally laid down, and new beginnings are served hot, honest, and full of grace. Spring came like an exhale. Trees bloomed soft pinks and whites along the sidewalks, and the icy breath of winter gave way to warm winds that carried laughter, music, and the smell of frying catfish down the block. Whitmore's stood in the heart of it all, its windows open, its doors never closed to the weary or the curious, and its tables always set with more than food. They were set with welcome. Inside, Marlena stood at the edge of the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour, and her hair tied back in a scarf the same color as wild violets. She watched Anna giggle with a pair of elderly customers at table 5, coloring on their menus and explaining why sweet tea was just liquid kindness. Marlena smiled. It had been 6 months since the fire, 4 since the cookbook release, and nearly 2 since Reggie walked back into her life carrying a letter like a bridge. He had come every Saturday since, never asked for more than a table and a plate. Sometimes he brought old photos, faded but precious. Sometimes just silence. They didn't talk about everything. Not yet. But the space between them was softer now, like dough rising in a warm room. Something was being made, slowly and patiently, something whole. That morning, Marlena had received a letter from the city's cultural council. Whitmore's was being nominated for the Community Anchor Award given to businesses that preserved culture, strengthened neighborhoods, and fed the soul of the city. She hadn't told anyone yet. She hadn't even decided if she'd go to the ceremony. Marlena moved to the stove and stirred a pot of her mother's lemon chicken stew. The scent rose up in steam, tangy and warm. As she ladled it into bowls, she heard Ethan's familiar footsteps behind her. "You're thinking about not going," he said, handing her a fresh towel. She raised an eyebrow. "I haven't said anything." "You didn't have to," he replied. "I've seen that look before." She smirked. "What look?" "The one that says, if I go to this fancy award ceremony, I'll have to admit that I built something worthy." Marlena sighed. "I don't need a plaque to tell me this place matters." "No," he said gently, "but maybe someone else does. Maybe someone out there is waiting to hear your story because it's the only thing keeping them from quitting." She turned back to the stew, quiet for a moment. "I'll think about it." That night, as the restaurant buzzed with familiar noise, Anna came running from the back room holding a piece of construction paper. "Mommy, I made a sign." Marlena knelt down as Anna showed her. It was a drawing of the restaurant, with people of all colors, shapes, and sizes sitting at the tables. Over the roof, in crayon-scrawled letters, it read, "Where everybody belongs." Marlena's heart swelled. "Can I hang this in the front window?" Anna asked. Marlena nodded. "You can hang it wherever you want. That sign says more than any award ever could." She helped her tape it to the glass just as the sun dipped below the city skyline, casting a golden light over everything inside. Later, when the last dish had been washed and the tables wiped down, the staff gathered like they always did. Not for ceremony, not for applause, just to breathe. To be together. Marjorie pulled out a box. "Before we all go, I got something." She opened it to reveal small pins silver, with the Whitmore's logo engraved in the middle. "Staff badges?" Tyler asked, smiling. "Legacy markers," Marjorie corrected. "For surviving, for building, for believing." "Oh." One by one, she pinned them to each person's apron. When she reached Marlena, she paused. "You built more than a restaurant," she said. "You built a home." Marlena tried to speak, but her throat tightened. So instead, she just whispered, "Thank you," and hugged her tight. As they all headed out into the soft spring night, Marlena lingered at the door. Reggie appeared on the sidewalk, hands in his coat pockets. "You closing up?" he asked. "Not really," she said. "This place never really closes." He looked through the window at the crayon sign. "That your daughter's work?" She sees clearer than most grown folks, Marlena said. Reggie nodded. I brought something. He handed her a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside was a tarnished pocket watch, the back engraved. For when time tries to erase us, keep ticking. It was my daddy's, he said. Thought it belonged with family now. Marlena held it carefully, her fingers trembling. You sure? I am. She closed the bundle again and clutched it to her chest. Thank you. They stood there for a moment, the street quiet around them. I'm glad you knocked, she said. I'm glad you answered, he replied. And then he walked off into the night, his shoulders lighter than they'd been in years. Marlena stepped back inside, locked the door behind her, and turned off the lights. The room dimmed, but it didn't go dark. The sign in the window caught the glow of a street lamp. The colors of Anna's drawing danced softly in the glass. Where everybody belongs. She looked around the room at the chairs, the walls, the stove, the table that had once held her tears and now held legacy. This wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a lasting fire. Not one that destroys. One that warms. One that stays. The story of Marlena, Anna, and Whitmore's teaches us that belonging is not something we wait to be given. It's something we build, brick by brick, meal by meal, act by act. It reminds us that dignity can be served alongside dinner, and that healing often starts not with grand gestures, but with someone choosing to stay, to forgive, to open the door, through quiet strength, resilience, and grace. Marlena turned a place of exclusion into a sanctuary of welcome, proving that even the deepest wounds can become the foundation of something beautiful.